Hi, everybody. This is about 4 o'clock on May 26th, 2023. It's now been 257 days since I visited with my little brother, Paul Kierans. We've missed 71 scheduled visits. I checked in with you this morning because the optics look good. I got a call from a group of psychologists in Vancouver, and they had appointed psychologists to do an investigation and write a report for the court about L'Arche's termination of Paul's visits with me and my visits with him 257 days ago. I still have my Christmas tree up. My jack-o'-lantern pumpkin melted, so I had to throw that out. I had to throw away all the Christmas cookies that I made for Paul. And it's been a roller coaster this week. So I found out on, I think it was Tuesday, that psychologist was willing to do an investigation and write a report. And they initially said that the retainer to get her working on that was $5,000. So I made an application to the court, and I asked that the funds could be paid out of Paul's estate because I don't have $5,000. And the lawyer for the public guardian and trustee hired an outside lawyer who's a sole practitioner and a nasty guy. I told you about him. He chuckles and giggles with my sister's lawyer outside the courtroom. He scowls at me until I told him that I have a request for freedom of information of the public guardian and trustees communications with my sister's lawyers and with L'Arche, and I'm sure that will be a treasure trove. But anyways, that's not on the topic. So what he said was that we couldn't use Paul's estate to pay a psychologist now to restore his visits. That would have to be at the end of the court hearing. And we didn't get on before a judge. Or we got on before a judge, but she adjourned the hearing on the basis that the judge who allowed L'Arche to terminate Paul's visits with me is the person that has to make all the decisions until the actual trial. So good news was that we got a psychologist, and normally they require that a lawyer retains the psychologist, but I'm not practicing law, but they allowed me to be the one to retain her, but I don't have $5,000. Then I actually read the retainer letter, and they were only asking for $4,000, and they set out a protocol for doing the investigation, which made a lot of sense. Basically, what should have been done at the beginning before L'Arche did this grotesque, cruel step of isolating Paul and confining him against his will, because he's disappointed at the end of our visits. So I went to Money Mart on Wednesday, and I asked them for the $4,000, and they said, no, but we will give you $2,200. So I thought, okay. And the lady at the Money Mart, the branch manager, said, why don't you go and ask at another bank for the $4,000? And if you're not, they say, no, you can come back here. This offer of $2,200 is good for 30 days. So I did that. I went across the street to the Canadian Imperial Bank of Commerce, CIBC. I have had an account with them since June of 2015. So for about 8 years, never had a problem, never had a bounce check. They would not give me the $4,000, but they did some kind of credit check, which changed my credit score. So then when I went back to Money Mart and I said, okay, I'll accept the $2,200 on an installment plan where I pay back on an installment plan. They said, oh no, that you're not approved for that anymore. So because I went across the street to the CIBC and asked them for an overdraft, $4,000 overdraft that affected my credit rating somehow. So that when I went back to Money Mart, who I've had an account with them since 2015, never bounced a check, never late in a payment. They pulled the rug out and they said that the $2,200 was not available anymore. So I phoned Money Mart. The reason I'm saying these things is because I just wanted you to know about these banking institutions. So I asked the Money Mart lady, why they had changed. She had promised me that the offer was good for 30 days. Anyway, so I came back home and I phoned Money Mart's main office, and they said, you refused the offer on Wednesday, so it's withdrawn. And so I was very disappointed, obviously, because I was only I think $1,500 short. Sorry, $1,300 short of the $4,000 retainer, which is kind of what the most important thing for me right now is to get an expert report from a psychologist saying that it's okay for Paul to visit with me and for me to be his guardian. I have a report from a medical doctor saying I'm fine and he has no reservations about me visiting Paul. But that's from my doctor. And so I have to get a report from a psychologist, or I think the appropriate thing to do is to get a report from a psychologist about whether it's in Paul's best interest. I was so excited that I found a psychologist who understood the problem and was willing to do an investigation and write a report. So now we're back down to, I think I have in the GoFundMe account, I've got $140 in the GoFundMe account to retain a psychologist that, reasonably, she's already reduced her retainer by $1,000 to $4,000. It's a very, very fair retainer. But I just feel like I've been on a roller coaster, up and down, up and down. So I wrote the government of BC, and that's the Community Living BC is the Crown Corporation that pays L'Arche $10,000 to $25,000 a month to warehouse Paul. And I wrote them and I said, would you be willing to pay the psychologist $4,000 until we get a final determination from a judge as to who should be ultimately responsible for that payment? So I just sent off an email to the government of BC about an hour ago, asking them if they would be willing to pay the $4,000, which is what should have happened in the first place. Paul should never have been isolated and confined against his will without at least a report from a psychologist, which this psychologist understands how to do and has prepared a protocol for how it should be investigated. And I accept the fact that, it's possible psychologists might say that it's not in Paul's best interest to visit with me, but I know that won't happen. I know Paul, I know me, and I know the situation, and I know why L'Arche has terminated my visits, because I know how the sausage is made. In other words, I've worked for the government in housing for mentally handicapped adults, and I know how it's supposed to run, and I know L'Arche is not complying with the way that it's supposed to be run. And they don't want somebody that understands Paul's speech, who I think only a handful of people in the world understand Paul when he's speaking, and I'm one of them. So they don't want someone who understands Paul's speech and who knows how things should run to be the committee or Paul's substitute decision maker. They want an 80-year-old nun that lives 4,000 kilometers away and who's only met Paul a few dozen times over the course of his lifetime to be his decision maker. So I know I'm going to win. I I'm afraid that either Paul or I will die before we are allowed to visit again. I'm doing everything according to the book, everything legally, and so that this doesn't have to happen again. So hopefully no other loved one, no other resident in care should ever have to go through this cruel and unusual punishment and nightmare of forcible confinement by their group home administrator, which is what's happening here. So again, to all my Facebook friends, thank you so much. It helps me immensely to be able to explain all the ups and downs of this journey, this saga that we're on. You're the only ones really that I can talk to about this. I'm sure there's people from L'Arche and from the government watching this as well. Hi. Remember, it's the new Democratic Party of British Columbia government that's doing this. So when you're at the ballot box next time, remember, you know, those bleeding heart socialists, new Democratic parties, of which I was one for most of my life. Remember, they're the ones that locked up my little brother in his retirement years and locked me away from him. So Paul, if you're watching this, and I hope you get to someday, I love you so much. I'm fighting so hard for you, baby. I'm just doing everything in my powers that I can. I wish I was still a lawyer. I wish I was still practicing. I wish I had all the money in the world, but things, it is what it is. And I'm doing everything I can think of to try and reinstate your freedom, baby, and to be able to visit you again. Like I said, I bought new Lego for you, and I went to the library and I got a big bag of books for us to read together, and God willing, we're going to see each other soon. I miss you so much. Take care. Bye-bye. I love you.